see it.
Yay! Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to our session today, From Adoption to Impact. I'll kind of step a little back in a bit on how we got here, but really the purpose of today is building high-value AI use cases with Crawl, Walk, Run. But let's start with introductions first. Nate, if you want to go first.
Sure, thanks. It's great to be on the webinar. This is the first time we've exhibited and presented a lot, but this is the first time we participated in this capacity. So I appreciate the confidence and excited. We've had a lot of opportunity to engage with clients as well as internal opportunities for ourselves. And so my role as co-founder of the organization, we're 25, well, this is our 26th year, but also working on operations and trying to figure out, even internally, like we're all figuring this stuff out, how we can leverage agents and workflows and where to not leverage agents because it's not necessary, but it's, so anyway, you're going to hear more about that from Nina today, but we're excited to be able to present and share what we've learned.
Yeah, and my name is Nina Adams, as you can see, 365 consultant. So work daily with clients on everything from Teams and SharePoint architecture, governance and compliance, my favorite thing, although it's not everybody's favorite thing, productivity, training, and kind of now going more to the AI consulting. And in the back, we do have Zach. He's going to be monitoring the chat and kind of answering your questions if they do come up. So thank you, Zach, for joining as well. Okay. Right, let's have a quick look at our agenda for today. So I wanted to start off with the use case challenge and just some of the things that we're seeing. We started off last year, as probably everybody did, with great enthusiasm, but a little bit of chaos, just trying everything and trying to throw stuff at the wall and trying to see what sticks. And that's kind of where we started. Last year, we actually did, in the spring, we did a prompt use case for specific roles and departments, and that's where we started to kind of change our mindset about, okay, how are we going to be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more intentional about how we use AI. And then in the fall, we did one on creating agents in Copilot Studio. And then in doing so, realized that maybe there was a little bit of a gap between the two and that, there were perhaps some steps that we were missing that we'd love to share today. So yeah, just talking through our approach, which is crawl, walk, run. As you probably have seen yourself as well, it feels as though there's just an infinite amount of use case possibilities. And it's so tricky to figure out which ones do we focus our time and attention and resources on. So that's kind of how we got to today. We are going to show some actual use cases, but to be quite honest, we have become a little bit more interested in the process of actually identifying those use cases, qualifying them, iterating through crawl, walk, run, because in a couple instances, as I'll demonstrate later, we got to walk and realized, you know what, we actually did absolutely fine on crawl. We don't need to continue on this road. And evaluating kind of the stop-go piece, which is kind of hard to do because you go down a rabbit hole, as I'm sure many of you have, and then realize that we're actually spending or wasting too many resources and time on this particular thing. And then, yeah, at the end, I wanted to show hopefully the demos work the way they're supposed to. We always know in these sessions it's always fun, but just to show you some actual kind of crawl, walk, run practical examples with Copilot, because I think it's one thing to kind of talk about it theoretically and quite a different thing to see it. Nate, anything you want to add before I move on? Okay. All right. So a couple of things that we've started to realize and read up in the news and some interesting statistics is first one there, adoption doesn't always equals impact. You've probably seen this around as well, where there's a lot of AI experimentation, but oftentimes very little to show for it. Another thing that we've kind of run into over the last few months is that we're trying to bolt some of these AI processes into old legacy workflows and realizing that some of that actually needs to be reimagined, redefined, that the two are not working together really well. Data is another big choke point. As I said, I'm a little bit of a governance geek, Michelle knows. So data quality is another thing that we want to be looking at. And in fact, 60% of AI projects are abandoned due to data quality issues. Tools over use cases. So I think oftentimes it's the new shiny thing and it's this great tool, and we're just kind of looking around to see where we can utilize this tool. One thing we've realized, and if it's not just with AI, I think it's with most tools in our ecosystem, is starting with the business challenge first and then technology second. So trying to figure out what business problem we're trying to solve and then which technology is going to match that. Oftentimes that's kind of in reverse, and that's where we start to run into problems as well. So quite a large amount, 40% of AI projects will be canceled because there's just not a real clear business value. Another thing, and again, it's kind of that initial phase that we've been in about like, let's try everything. With use case dilution, the more use cases we try to take on, the less success we are having. So trying to pick 2 or 3 use cases and emphasize our time and resources on those instead. Okay, so that's kind of how we got to the crawl, walk, run approach. Laying it out at the bottom there, I know the block is small, but some really important foundational sprints, figuring out what that AI strategy is, your policy around AI. So there's super important cloud architecture and data hygiene, otherwise it's garbage in and garbage out, security and compliance. I could do a whole separate session just on that, but unfortunately that's not the focus of today's workshop. But yeah, very, very important. And also, I would say elements to continue to reconsider at every phase, because your data changes, your hygiene changes. So although it takes up a small space on this slide, super, super important. All right. So from a crawl perspective, the purpose there is some of that early enablement and training and taking that very first step in identifying AI opportunities. So some of the tactics that we've seen work really well are some of those foundational training workshops, so prompt workshops and creating good prompts. We've had a lot of success with our champions program and having those regular lunch and learns and those regular touch points with each other, because a lot of those beginning use cases kind of started there, where somebody shows something as part of a show and tell and everybody's like super excited, like, how did you do that? And I can see it's really working well. AI brainstorming sessions, I have some documentation to show for each of these as well, is also a really good place to start identifying some of those repeatable things we're doing that are wasting time. A lot of that's summarizing data, trying to get some key insights into data. And I have a little a worksheet that might be helpful as well. And then that initial crafting, testing, and refining some of those initial prompts. So I would say in this crawl phase, what we've seen from an AI crawl tool is really our Copilot chat, saving prompts, and I'll kind of show that later because that was a more recent addition. Using the prompt agent, that's been super, super useful as well. And then I'll show you a little bit later what our planning document looks like for identifying some of those. Interestingly enough, with crawl, we've seen that this is often more of an individual activity. So we're seeing like somebody in our champions group, or maybe one of our power users is kind of making these inroads with AI. Nate, anything you want to add before I go to walk?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I remember reading an article that was about that speaks to the crawl and even what Nina said earlier about the lack of business value is because I think some of the most powerful AI use cases today are one person using something on their own machine. And so the problem is the organization hasn't found a way to build an initiative and or identify those things that are applicable beyond the individual or the team or the department or the entire organization. So I think that's where there's a lot of stuck in the crawl, I think, because people don't know how to go to the next step. So that's part of what we're hoping to address today. But I imagine that's what a lot of you are seeing in the market as well.
All right, so let's look at where we went then from the crawl to the walk. So the purpose with the walk is really expanding that initial enablement with more targeted and role-based training. So the champions group was great, and kind of having those very general workshops were really great, but we started to see a lot more value when we were doing more targeted sessions with maybe our sales department or with our IT department or operations or service desk. So trying to identify identify and evaluate those use cases specific to their role, and then trying to figure out which ones make sense to scale even further. A really key point in this was mapping and defining those business workflows. I'll show you a little bit later how we had kind of skipped some of this and went straight to building agents, and then the whole thing kind of fell apart and we had to backtrack and literally go back to the drawing board and whiteboard all of the workflows, refine them, make sure that they were working the way they should. Because the tool at the end of the day is really going to mirror that, and if that piece isn't working properly, then the tool doesn't work properly either. So the tactics that we've used for this are team working sessions, trying to identify those time-consuming activities, repeatable workflows, and then hopefully try to match the right AI solution with that. Again, I have a worksheet that I'll share a little bit later, which is just an example. I'm sure yours will be even better, but basically an opportunity scorecard so that we can pick 1 or 2 high-value ROI wins, so we can start making some decisions on where to invest that time and effort. One thing I want to call out as we're going through crawl, walk, run is that with more complex tools, there's more of a time investment, there's more of a financial investment. So that's why it's kind of important to evaluate our progress as we go. And I have a worksheet for that too. So for our AI walk tools, what we found works really well is creating prompt libraries for that department, Copilot notebooks, and I'll kind of show you some of the ways that we've leveraged that. Site and document library agents have been a really good kind of interim piece for us as well. But then using those opportunity and success scorecard worksheets to evaluate, decide where to stop working on things, where things are working or not working. All right, and then moving over to the run. So the purpose there is really to scale beyond the walk phase, and then we've started to move into workflow automation, agentic AI, and really thinking carefully about which use cases are worth pursuing even further, because as we know, it's going to take more time, effort, money, and skill. Also, re-looking at those, and we're constantly doing that, redefining and adapting those business workflows so that they work well with the AI tools, rather than, well, that's the way we've done it now for the last 10 years. We're just going to make the AI work with that. We haven't had a lot of success with that way of doing things. So the tactics here, again, is we can similarly use the opportunity scorecard. I'll show you now how the rating system works, and really important as well, evaluating progress on an ongoing basis. It's really hard, and I speak from experience, when you go down that rabbit hole, to pull yourself out of it, to say, you know what, now I'm just wasting time and money on something that's actually going nowhere. That's really hard to do. So on the AI run tools, that's kind of where we go more into Copilot Studio, creating chatbots, autonomous agents, automation, and so on. So hopefully that gives you kind of the 30,000-foot overview of how we're utilizing it. Nate, before I go to the next slide, it looks like you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, we're not the only ones or the first ones by any means to reference like a crawl, walk, run kind of methodology or approach. But I do want to call out that it's one that has really helped people wrap their minds around it. And so I've had several conversations with peers and vendor partners that we work with, and we've used this language to kind of align and understand, that there's different approaches. And I think the other thing that's really been impactful through conversation has been that it's not necessarily a progression that you have to always go to the run. And I know we're going to show you this and give examples of this later today, but I think sometimes the idea is that we have to always run and we have to always use agents to get the most value out of our AI use. But that's not the case. And you might have different solutions at different phases at different times. Of experimentation or of in full production. So anyway, I just wanted to call out that like this definitely isn't like our nomenclature that we came up with as far as crawl, walk, run, but I've had lots and lots of conversations with peers and vendors, and it seems to really resonate and help people really wrap their minds around it. So if you're not using something like this, this context has really helped us facilitate conversation.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing to add there is, I know initially, like, I was just so excited about, Copilot Studio and building agents and doing all of the stuff that I had missed the step of really fully understanding what that department was trying to achieve there, and really understanding what does their day-to-day look like, what do their operations look like, what do they work like, where are those pain points and the things that are time-consuming and annoying. And until I had figured that out, the agent, they were kind of looking at me like, what is this? It's not solving anything. So it's kind of a hard lesson for myself to slow down and kind of go through those steps as well. All right. So this was kind of in the crawl phase, and again, this could be any kind of brainstorm methodology that you already utilize internally, but we found that that's kind of a good place to start. Is just like let's look at a couple things. Like let's talk about some patterns and workflows in your day-to-day. So what tasks is your team performing repeatedly that follow a similar pattern each time? So that could be creating reports or drafting emails or scheduling meetings or categorizing information, something that's like really repeatable. The other question is around reviewing, analyzing, and summarizing. So what type of documents or information do you regularly need to review, analyze, or summarize? This could be contracts or meeting notes or client research or industry reports or customer feedback. Also looking at multiple data sources. So, and I'll show you an example a little bit later of from our sales team, where we're looking for data that's outside of our tenant as well. So we want to be able to check LinkedIn, and we want to be able to check company websites. So researching, answering some of those common questions. So with the brainstorming, what we usually do is we tell the team, hey, don't overthink it, go with your gut, just pick one, and then we'll meet up again in 2 weeks. Start using some of the prompts, using the prompt agent, sharing some of this in your champions group, and just making those first few steps in the crawl to walk direction. Then moving from crawl to walk, this was the opportunity scorecard that I was speaking about. I've seen some really complex ones. I prefer a little bit simpler. We really are just asking 3 things here. And again, this could be different depending on your needs or your organization or your metrics. But we want to put some of those ideas that we've now brainstormed here as the business problem, and then really just ask 3 questions. Is it worth it? In other words, is this going to save time? Is it going to cut costs? Is it going to make money? So whatever those metrics are for your organization, yes, big impact would mean we're saving 10 hours or more per week on this, or $10,000 a week. So again, this could be whatever your internal metrics are. So that's kind of the worth it bucket. The second one is, can we do it? Do we have what it takes to make this work? Is this a really quick setup? Is it affordable? Is it easy? Do we need to put a little bit more time and investment in it? Maybe we need an AI consultant to help us with, or is this too complex or too expensive for now? And the other one is, do it now. So is this urgent or can it wait? Yeah, this is a massive pain point. We really need to get this sorted out really quickly. And then kind of just scoring it on those 3 things. And based on it, this is just a spreadsheet with some conditional formatting, my favorite. And then deciding there on like 2 or 3 priorities, like this, it looks like it's absolutely worth it. Let's start planning now. So I do want to just highlight this first one. Is just kind of our first example here. So this was something that came up with our sales team. So our sales reps spend typically 2 to 3 hours for each prospect that they're researching. So that could be 10 to 20, let's just say 10 for now, but it could be even more than that. And there's a whole workflow of different call stages, setting up the first meeting, doing the background research, qualifying it. So quite a few steps in that workflow. And it's just taking them an enormous amount of time to go prepare for it, to get the cold call script ready, to reach out via an email in a very personal and customized way versus just another sales email, LinkedIn message, and so on. So I'm going to kind of point out how we took that particular use case through the crawl, walk, run. Nate, anything before I go to the next slide? Okay.
Oh, let's go.
All right, so here's our use case. So here again, our challenge is our reps are spending 2 to 3 hours on all of these prospects, getting ready to prepare these calls. This is typically what the 4 stages would look like. So trying to get that first meeting set up. So a lot of prospect and contact research, doing an introduction email, a LinkedIn message potentially, getting all of that background information, then doing a qualifier call, the cold call script, qualifier questions, things that are particularly honed in on that particular prospect or client. it. This first meeting stage as well, because our industry focuses on a very specific demographic, we want to know before the salesperson even spends all this time on it that this is even going to be a good fit as a client to begin with. And then prepping for a more in-depth call, helping the prospect think through their pain points, discovery questions, and then lastly, the scoping and the quoting call. So looking at this from the crawl perspective, this is where we leveraged, we just started the journey of creating some really awesome prompts, and also documenting those very specific workflows and understanding what the requirements are. And that was a lot of whiteboarding with the sales team, and then really just continuing to refine those prompts, either with chat or the prompt coach was actually incredibly useful for this, the new prompt coach agent. So here's just some of the results, just helping us to put these prompts together. What we then encouraged the sales team to do is, if the prompt was working really well, to save it so that they could reuse it, and that would kind of be the first step towards making this a more repeatable workflow. So having those individual reps tested in Copilot Chat, bookmarking, or saving the prompt. And then that way we can start to identify which ones are working really well and which ones maybe not so great. All right, then going to the walk phase, we met then with the sales team as a group and kind of we're looking at which prompts were the best at the end of the day, made some improvements to the call workflows that maybe there was some misunderstanding about things that were required. Then we thought, well, we want to have this shared with the whole team, so how can we do that? So there were two ways in this instance that we could do it. One is a prompt library down here where we did this with a SharePoint list. This could be an Excel document with the prompts listed in there. And then we also tested using a notebook, which worked really well as well. And I'll show those a little bit later so you can see what that looked like. So I think either one of these work really well, just depends on the team. Some of them just like to copy and paste it out of the prompt library, and others were using the notebook and kind of, saving everything there as well. All right. So once that piece was working really well, when we got to the run phase, we thought, okay, how do we make this even more streamlined? How do we make this whole experience a little bit smoother? We know now, we've learned what instructions to use because we could use instructions in the notebook. We know what those workflows are. We've defined them really clearly. So now we want to make this even easier. We want to create an agent that can do some of the heavy lifting here. And again, I'll show this a little bit later. So we want to make it super easy for the sales team. We're going to create a little form. It lives in their sales team in Microsoft Teams. They fill in the call stage over here, the client name and the contact name, and the agent will go and get all of that background information and email it to them automatically. The next step from there, if we wanted to take that into kind of more of a sprint, our next idea, we haven't developed this yet, but is to connect that agent to another agent which takes information requests from our website. So if somebody puts in a submission to say, hey, I'm super interested to hear more about your security consulting services, the agent will match that request with the right sales rep and automatically send all of that background information for that prospect. So they don't even have to go fill anything in. It all happens automatically. So here's just one kind of example of how we took it from crawl, walk, run, and I'll kind of show that in the demo environment a little bit later. Nate, anything else before we?
No, the only thing I would say is that this is, nearly every organization, especially if you're looking in a small business, they struggle with, sales and having optimizing salespeople's time, especially if sometimes that salesperson is the owner. And so this is one of the things that we felt was a pretty ubiquitous example across nearly every business, and that it wouldn't take a lot to really fine tune, and in a way that, again, probably every organization, whether it be a small or medium business, that is the majority of whom we all work with, could probably use. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we not only do it ourselves because it saves us time, but why we wanted to show it today, because we felt nearly every small business and definitely or medium business struggles with something like this.
Michelle, don't have a fright, but I used you as a demo here on my screenshot. So if you do see your name there, I did use it in vain. I apologize. All right, and then super important is the evaluation piece. Again, the scorecard could be whatever you need it to be. We've tried to keep ours really simple, but having a 30, 60, 90-day check-in where we are starting to track, like, is this really a time savings? What does adoption look like? Is this, is the quality of the research really good? Is there a good business impact? Is it making things more cost efficient? And technically, is it working? Is it smooth? Are there glitches? Are there things that maybe we need to fix with the agent to make it better? And so over here, we just look at kind of an overall score, and it's like, if it's success, we know we can keep continuing on that. But we've also identified, okay, there's maybe some areas that we need to do some improvement on. It's a new tool. Our sales team is still getting used to it. So we need to do some more training around adoption and things like that as well. So again, the scorecard could be anything, as long as it's a way to evaluate kind of what your progress is like. And again, to pull back and say, hey, these scores don't actually really look really good. It's not really saving time. I'm spending too much time on fixing it. We don't have the right expertise right now, or whatever those things are, to say, for now, maybe we hold this project and focus our attention elsewhere. All right, I just wanted to run through just a few other use cases that we've done, and kind of, what that would look like as a crawl, walk, run. So here's a very common one as well. So job descriptions and policy writing. This could be HR, it could be IT. There's a lot of departments that are responsible for some of these things. And again, starts with creating a really great prompt, and then saving the prompt to reuse it. Potentially, this could be something that we'd create a notebook around with some very specific instructions in there, and we ground that in, other policies that we've created before, and reference those in the notebook so that we can narrow the scope and refine some of those results a little bit better. We may decide in this particular instance that this is working great. Like, there's no point in now spending a whole lot of time and energy on creating an agent for it, because it's working fine the way it is. All right, this is Nate's example. He's going to show this one a little bit later. Nate, do you want to just quickly describe it, and then I'll...
Yeah, sure. The one of the things that was a very repeatable problem that we had, and have in other areas as well, but is something that we felt was pretty, again, ubiquitous across most organizations. They struggle with being able to define whatever it is that they do. And so you've got experts in the organization that maybe been there for, 5, 10 plus years, and you have newer people joining that might not understand those nuances. And so trying to put together content that not only can be technical understanding, business impacting language, possibly then in the world of AI, trying to provide a lot of answers. So maybe writing a blog post that's SEO and AEO optimized, a script for video content that you might be able to put out online to train potential prospects and clients, as well as then an internal LMS quiz that could go to help train your team. So that's one of the things that, when we try and train something, that any of these variables have wide, lots of different implications, but we're talking about the same thing. It's just in different ways, whether it be internal training, client facing, an LMS, blogs, et cetera. So that's something that we were rolling out an initiative. And again, I know I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit here, Nina, but we were rolling out an initiative that had well over 100 repeatable items, where I was trying to put together all those things, those 6 or 7 different variables for every single category, and there were well over 100 categories. And so again, it's something that we actually have been doing, and it's something that we felt was applicable to share, because not only is an example where we aren't going to go all the way to run, or we decided not to go all the way to run, but it's something that is a repeatable thing that we felt is pretty applicable to a lot of organizations from a training perspective.
I was just looking at the comments real quick about whether these are actual scenarios. Yes, they are. These are all a work in progress scenarios internally at MyTech. The demos that I'm going to show you, I had to convert some of that so that I could show the demo, not our actual environment. But yeah, these are ongoing projects that we're actively working on at the moment. So yeah, we can speak from experience where we've been banging our head against the wall for sure. All right, so this is another example of where what Nate developed is working really well, and we didn't really feel like it warranted some additional, work around agent development. This was one that we actually showed in a workshop last year. New employee onboarding is one of those really challenging things. So a new employee could potentially just use Copilot and do some general searches around HR policies and procedures, handbooks, those types of things. We could potentially do a notebook, or we could even do an HR site agent would be another way where they can, with the scope is narrowed a little bit more and they can search for very specific things. But then we realized that, for a new employee, that's a lot to navigate when they're starting at a new organization. And so we, in this particular case, felt that a new hire helper agent would be very helpful because the agent could do a whole lot of other additional things. For example, create an onboarding checklist in Microsoft Planner, and that's tied to that particular user, and that helps the user track their tasks. It would still give very specific guidance on HR resources, employee handbooks, training videos, but there was also a way for for them to fill out a little form. I'll show you a little bit later, where we could get to know them better, and that would post into the all company Teams channel as well. And then also an ongoing survey, which would go to the HR manager to see how well the onboarding process was actually working. There's obviously a lot of other things that we could do with the agent as well, but just an example of kind of elevating it from just basically a chatbot to, here's some other really awesome things that would be helpful for our new users. Just wanted to highlight that here. Like Zach and I did a lot of work on this, and we skipped kind of that middle step. And yeah, that's a very typical banging our head against the wall because we hadn't really understood or refined the workflows before we tried to build the agent. That did not work well. So just don't make our mistake. All right, so here's just a couple of other quick examples for IT and consulting, IT help desk. So that's a really great use case as well. But potentially that could be an IT help desk site agent as well. In our case, we decided that that was fine, but you may decide like there's other really awesome things that an IT help desk agent could do. Maybe some, low level, help with users, but in our case we decided okay, that was enough. We had some other higher priority use cases that we needed to do development on. Another big one was our service catalog. So especially as a consulting team, we were getting a lot of questions on like, what are your services and what do they cost? And, which one should I be offering clients? And we started that as just, kind of helping, especially sales typically in navigating this, with our SharePoint intranet, but found that we actually needed to create a little bit more specificity, I think, with that agent. So we did a site agent and then eventually did one that we could create like a chat bot, but with very specific topics that would kind of help guide folks through this particular service would work with this particular prospect or person that's asking. So yeah, we needed to refine that a little bit more. People were still struggling to get the information they wanted, and so in that sense, a service catalog agent made sense. Here's a real funny example. Zach and I do a lot of governance reporting. I'm sure there's a lot of IT folks on this call that, kind of look at your teams and your SharePoint sites and usage and app usage and Copilot usage and try to put some sort of a report together. And we were determined that we were going to create this amazing notebook for this to work. And just for the life of us, it just wasn't working. I don't know what we were doing wrong, but we realized that we were spending an eye-watering amount of time on trying to get the notebook to work properly when the prompt that I had saved was doing the job perfectly. And so again, it's one of those situations you just have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, I need to pull back now. There's other things that I need to prioritize. All right, so with that, I do want to pull up a couple demos. As I'm pulling that up, Nate, if there's any other thing you want to add there on that last slide.
No, just it's I love that, I think learning from doing and realizing that not everything is going to go all the way to run. And then finding out that the whole point of this is trying to get consistent outputs in a repeatable way, and that wasn't happening in that example. And so we had to
Yes.
kind of say, stop, let's just use what's working.
All right, so I actually wanted to show some of those that I showed in the slides. So this is that governance report I was talking about. It's basically, I've just done one here for Contoso. It has SharePoint sites and teams and usage and those types of things. The prompt coach here was super helpful in helping me craft the prompt and refine it. I've put in here what kind of outputs that I want, and I just attach the report to it and let it run. So I'm just going to let that run because we know with demos, they work and sometimes don't work, but this is typically the output that I get. So I can see kind of what my storage is, my team's engagement, my Copilot prompts, and just do kind of little key findings that I share with clients when we do these assessments. Hopefully, let's see, that one's still thinking over here. I am, if that's okay with everybody, just to save time, I'm going to stop that really quickly. I hate doing that, but don't want to let it run for too long. I wanted to quickly show you where to save it. Let me just go to a different prompt real quick. I don't know if anybody's used the saving option yet. So this little bookmark option up here, super helpful. I use it all the time for the prompts that are really good, and I want to just keep on using those. So here you could give it a title, put in, the prompt goes in there. And so when I'm starting a new chat, and I go to see more down at the bottom here and go to the prompt gallery and go to my prompts, I can see those saved prompts there and just quickly throw them in there and run it really quickly. So this was that example where the notebook didn't work so well, but with the saved prompt, I was getting a really consistent output every time. Because I think that's some of the challenge as well, is the consistency piece. Okay, I'm going to go over to the sales side just to show you there. Again, that's also started with just refining the prompt kind of in the crawl stage. This isn't, again, just want to reiterate, this is our demo environment, so there's not as much as we have in our actual MyTech environment. But so here's like the prompt. This is just that first step in those different phases that I spoke about. So here I could just use my prompt, and I could just input there MyTech partners with the specific contact name and let that run and get some pretty good results. I don't want to run it now because I want to kind of go through some of the other examples, but we found that it was doing a pretty consistent job. But now, because there's 4 different stages in that workflow, we now have to basically go run all of those prompts separately and save it separately and so on. So that can start stacking up really quickly. So the walk piece is one option, is to do an Excel workbook and have the prompts, once we've tested them and refined them, live there. Another option that's worked really well for us is doing a SharePoint list with all of those prompts that people find are working super well. We've just tagged them for that particular team or department. So these are the sales examples. The other walk piece was creating a notebook. So it had specific instructions in there, and I could say run the prompt, and it would go through, and this is kind of the results, the research on the contact. It scraped LinkedIn, it looked at the website, got all my discovery questions prepped up, my follow-up emails, my call cheat sheet. So it's a pretty slick way of doing it. I can just show you here. That's kind of useful, and this is also useful later when you're building agents, is tailoring those instructions there as well. It kind of gives you a bit of a sense of what an agent could do, but it doesn't necessarily require users to have the skills yet to use Copilot Studio. So a really great interim phase, I would say. And then kind of going to the run side, here in our sales team, we have a little, just a form that they fill in. We wanted to make this even easier. We just selected the call stage, the client name, contact name, their domain, hit submit, and that'll automatically then email you as the person that submitted that form with all that background information, depending on which stage of the sales prospecting workflow you're in. All right.
Hey, Nina, can you go back to the
Yeah.
notebook? One of the things that even myself struggled with in understanding, especially as they're trying to learn different AI solutions. But how do you, like, it's pretty simple to actually save and share it as a notebook. So like I know that sounds really basic, but for those who may or may not have actually done that before, can you just show that really quick?
So saving a chat or creating a notebook from
No,
scratch?
no, just showing that, like, yeah, creating a notebook and then sharing it. So like when you talk about getting into
Okay.
the walk phase where you actually create a notebook and then share it, just being able to actually do that.
Right, so here's just a test notebook. I can add some files. That's a really great way to ground it in very specific reports or other outputs that you have. I'll just put in here the 3-call framework, for example, click create. I'll show you in a second how to add additional references as well. And then what's worked really well for us is to then, as a team, to share that notebook out with one another so that other people can collaborate in the team on their notebook as well. So here I can add additional references. So if I wanted to, if there's other examples that I can use, or, like I said, reports or scripts or cold call scripts or outputs that worked really well, the more information I can give it, the better. I can also here on the chat side of things, if I've run a chat and it was kind of related to that. Let's see if I can quickly go to an old chat here. I just want to show you how to add it to that notebook. So if I edit it in pages here, let's see, where's my, so if you click on the 3 dots and click add to notebook, I can add those chat results to the notebook as well. So I can just click test notebook and go back to my service catalog notebook. Yeah, so we found it is a great way to keep all the different things on that particular topic in one place. What's also nice with this, if I go back to notebooks and to the sales prospecting notebook, one thing that's a little different from just having a SharePoint list with like a prompt library is I could put some additional background information in here. So for example, this is what the 3-call framework is about. So if somebody's new to the team, like, what are we actually trying to achieve with this? And so I can add some additional information in there, which is super useful as well. Anything else in this one, Nate, before I go over to HR?
I just know that sometimes the even like I know for me, as you've shown me some things, sometimes it's the most basic things like create a notebook. Oh yeah, that sounds great, but how do you do it? So so thanks for walking through that.
Cool. All right. So here's how we walked through the HR piece. So this kind of started as more of a site agent, just a very basic one that was tied to our HR site. So, a new person could say, hey, tell me about PTO, and I'd get some really good information in there. But again, we realized that it wasn't just trying to access information. There was this whole long onboarding checklist that they had to go through, which was a little trickier, and we wanted to introduce them to the team. So for that particular one, we felt like creating an agent was a really good idea. Here's some of the things that this agent can do. This is just our demo one, but linked to our onboarding training videos, linked to HR policies and procedures. This onboarding checklist creates a like a task list in Microsoft Planner that's specific to that user, and that's a really good way for them to keep on coming back to it and kind of tracking where they are with things like shadowing specific people, lunch with a manager, whatever you wanted to build into that. The let's get to know you. So this is just kind of where we've shared it. I'll just open it here. There's a little bit of a tell us a bit about yourself, and you can fill in all your details, your favorite color, movie, band. Once they hit submit, that actually goes to the all company Microsoft Teams, and it's like a please welcome Joe blogs, Joe loves Inception and Coldplay, and kind of getting a great way to introduce them. And then this last one over here, complete the survey, is, once they've gone through onboarding, that they fill out the form, and this will go to the HR manager so that whoever they are can, make some adjustments to the onboarding process. Maybe they have suggestions on improving this. So hopefully, they'll recommend our onboarding process in the future as well. So that's kind of our, and this one is, as I said, a really great example of where we skipped some steps here with this one and ended up having to start from scratch again because we didn't really, some of the onboarding workflows didn't really mesh well with an agent, and so we had to rethink some of that stuff as well. All right, I just want to look at
If I remember
time.
correctly too, Nina,
Yep.
real quick, if I remember correctly as well, that there was we were getting inconsistent results when we were testing, and part of it is because we had multiple documents that had conflicting information. So like around like expense reports or something like that. So
Yep.
it also kind of clued us in that we had to clean up, find out where the inconsistent documentation was and clean it up.
Yeah, and I feel bad that we spent so little time on the data hygiene and governance piece because, as I said, that's a whole session all by itself. But yeah, we had two versions of an employee handbook. One was an older version, and yeah, that's where some of the inconsistencies came in. And that's why in that slide, I kind of refer to those as foundational sprints. But as far as any good governance policy goes, that's something we should be checking on pretty regularly. Yeah, making sure that the data there is the most up to date because it's like anything else, garbage in, garbage out. So yeah, great point there. I'll just quickly walk through these. I think you're starting to get the idea of kind of the crawl, walk, run, but here is our service catalog. This was the notebook worked really, really well here. Basically a list of all of our consulting services, pricing, all sorts of things. So we referenced that all here so that the notebook would be grounded in this information. We had some very specific instructions on some of the core actions, what we wanted the format to look like. Depending on how people asked a question, these are the results that we should get. And so that worked really well. We also tested a service catalog agent on our SharePoint site as well. But yeah, eventually we realized if we wanted to tailor this even more, this was a really good use case to go to agents. For those from the 90s, you know who Agent Smith is. But here, we with topics and things like that, we're able to tailor this even more because with services, it's kind of tricky matching the right thing with the right scenario. And so here we could refine some of that a little bit more. I would say the site agent and the notebook worked really well, but when we wanted to do some additional customization, we decided to go to an agent on that one. But in this particular case, getting the reference documentation and the instructions right here in the notebook saved us a bunch of time when we got to we could copy and paste a lot of that information over and just refine it a little bit more in Copilot Studio. And then the last but not least, Nate, if you want to talk through your notebook.
Yeah. I'll respond verbally to you. I was about ready to, Bob Bruce put a comment or a question about who owns the notebooks, keeps them up to date. So I was just typing that out, but I'll skip over that and I'll just verbally say it. I think
Okay.
one of the challenges that we've had is this is why we think trying to get people's minds wrapped around leveraging AI as a program, not a project. Right? It's like you really want to have, you want to build an organizational rhythm and program around it and ownership and collaboration around it. Because again, who keeps it up to date? It's constantly changing. You're going to learn things as you go. The tools are going to be updating rapidly. And so like I think this is candidly one of the biggest challenges because we're all busy and we'd like to be able to check a box. Well, you never really fully check the box. You can build something, but you have to be able to continually iterate and maintain it. I think that's also one of the reasons why Nina talked about the scorecard is over 30, 60, 90, did the things that you thought were going to come to fruition, did they? And is it worth continuing the maintenance of whatever it takes to maintain the system that you may have built? So anyway, great question. Sorry that it's not a direct answer other than, assigning that and using, a RACI chart or something and making sure that there's continual ownership of that. So segueing to this, I'll tell you one of the challenges that I think exists in nearly every industry, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to use this as an example today, is that the more you become an expert in what you do, the harder it is sometimes to explain it to those that are outside of your industry because you understand the industry jargon, you understand the acronyms, you understand the nuances, and so the other part is I think that that I love this example is because it probably took me several hours, probably 3 or 4 hours, to use AI to build the prompt itself, right? So I went through lots of testing, knowing what I wanted as an output, and really working through saying, like, help me, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to accomplish, all these different variables. And then I also like learned as I went along and as I tested it, and I'm like, gosh, it'd be great if I need to write blog. Our marketing team could use blog content for this, and they want to get SEO and AEO content to help increase our rankings and stacking when people are searching on these topics. So, and we want video content. So as I went on, it helped me build out, I think it's 7 different things where it's like, I want a full business impacting statement to really understand the investment, perspective, the risks associated with it, business benefits, as you see, risks not having it. Then I wanted to have some technical instructions to our team, like, how do we discover this thing? What are the nuances? What are some of the reports that we can run to make sure we're assessing this information accurately? Then I wanted to have a shorter, a more concise business benefit language that could be used in some of our solution tools, some of our quotes and scopes, in some of our language that we're using directly with clients. Then I wanted a blog post that could actually then again help us with SEO and AEO. I wanted a client-facing, customer-facing, external-facing video script that we could then build. With recommendations for examples or case studies. Then I wanted to follow up that with an internal training video. So basically the external video and then the internal would be the combination for the internal video that we could then snip it to be able to deliver external content and internal content kind of in the same motion. And then finally wrapping that up with a quiz that could then be built into our LMS, so that it could be something where we could be working with it to onboard new team members and test that they know their knowledge. So again, maybe you don't want to go through all of those steps, but if you think about the different things across any given organization that you might want to figure out some sort of training content, you want to have business benefit language, you want to be able to maybe have external content or an LMS content. I knew that I had to, and the key thing is I had to repeat this well over 100 times. So it was worth it for me to be able to spend the 3 or 4 hours that I spent working with AI to help me build the prompt instructions and test the prompt instructions that it was giving me the outputs that I was seeking to then build and leverage across those 100 different variables. So that's really where that came from. And we've just used it for that initial project. We haven't yet extended it to other initiatives in the organization, but I'm highly confident that there are going to be other areas, whether it be on the finance team or on our service team or whatever, where we might want to be building internal content, external content, and training content for our team. So ultimately, that's what it is. And I start with saying, hey, here's the variable that we're trying to assess. And then I say, ask me questions if you have questions, and then I'm able to give it that. I was able even to put things in there like, don't use M dashes, because that's from a formatting perspective. I made sure to, don't ask me questions about case studies, just recommend case studies. And then if we have case studies, we can put them in or we can go find them. So it was asking questions that were really great questions, but it was holding up my efficiency of completing the initiative. And so those are some things that I used to iterate the instructions over time as I was learning, to make sure that I was getting the right outputs with minimal inputs. So anyway, that's probably, I think one of the big lessons from this is that A, it was a repeatable thing. B, that I used AI to help me build the prompts, right? And I know there's the prompt coach that's here, but even asking AI, like, help me with this. I'm trying to solve this. I'm trying to write a prompt to help me do this. And again, people on this call probably know that you can do that, and you've probably done it. But I think sometimes that is definitely not something that's widely understood across the clients that we all work with. So that's definitely a tip to help people think through something that's repeatable, and then use AI to help you build a prompt that's going to create some efficiency for you. So I'll pause there, Nina. So those are some of the big lessons that I learned through this process.
Yeah, just showing a couple of the outputs there, and then kind of some of those instructions that we gave it as well, which is some of the things that you've mentioned there too. So yeah, I think it's
pages of instructions. Like there's
yes.
no way I would have been able to write those prompt instructions by myself. You're right. So it's pages of instructions to give me the outputs that I wanted. So again, AI helped me do that.
And here's the grounding information. And for this, we actually just say run the prompt. Here's the technical standard, and it would find the prompt and run it itself. So we didn't even have to copy and paste or do anything too crazy there as well. But somebody says I like M dashes. Yeah, I just to circle back to Bob's on who owns the notebook. I think at the moment it's kind of with our sales team, it's more like the managers that are, as we're starting to figure out some of these steps. It doesn't have to be a notebook. It could be just a SharePoint list that everybody in the team contributes to if there's really good content there as well. But at the moment, it's, yeah, on the sales side, it's the manager. On our service catalog and some of those things, it's me. So whoever's kind of starting that initiative, but as long as the notebook is shared, I welcome, other people on my team to contribute it and refine it as well. And again, it doesn't have to be a notebook. It could be the SharePoint list or an Excel library, something like that as well. I'm just kind of looking back on some of so Wes, I saw something there with, are there any sort of reporting or feedback within Copilot can help you identify inconsistencies? Can you tell me what it runs into some, is that to refer to the data inconsistencies?
I think so. Yeah, it was a
Okay.
question when we talked about kind of how we had two handbooks uploaded, and that the agent was looking at both handbooks, which had one of them was older and one of them was the current.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's kind of the prevention is better than cure thing, and why the whole governance aspect is so important, and doing, looking at some of those older versions. We've had some clients that actually you create an agent or scope Copilot to a SharePoint site that they know has the most up-to-date information on. So that's another way to deal with that. But yeah, those regular check-ins on your content, looking for those inactive sites, documents that haven't been touched. It's a painful process, but I found that if we're doing it consistently, there's less of a concern with inconsistencies. Yeah, I don't know if there's an
I
easy
think
fix for
too,
that.
Wes. Yeah, there's not. I mean, the problem again. This speaks to your AI initiatives need to be a program, not a project, because in a lot of small businesses. Again, I remember talking to one of the Microsoft VPs, Jose, and I don't remember his last name, but I remember talking to him right after Copilot came out. And one of the things he mentioned to me is like, which as far as like getting into small business world, was that most small businesses don't have their data in the cloud and they don't have it structured. And I think so we have more of a personnel behavior change that we need to leverage and work on with our clients, because in the old file server world, and even if they were early adopters of SharePoint, they didn't necessarily have a reason to have some data cleanliness, because they could have version old or the date is more current. So people went to the newest current, the one that the document that was more current from a date perspective. They didn't require to have document change management methodology or archiving methodology employed. So there's when we're helping people go from it's not just digital, it's not just paper to digital, but it's more like digital to AI. They need to layer in some of those other methodologies in order to, and from an ongoing perspective, not just a one-time perspective, to ensure that we're not uploading data that's not going to create conflicts, and that we have an archiving methodology employed. So, and a change management methodology. So that's what makes all this hard. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here with everybody here, but human behavior is going to be the hardest part of a lot of this, not the technology clicks that we all get to help them make.
And I do, just as a side note, at the end of this presentation, there will be a QR code with some resources. Part of that is an agent planning document, just a simple one, but it kind of helped us through, it's almost like any app development, right? Going through the planning, configuration, testing, and all of that. And part of that's also like, am I getting the results that I'm supposed to be getting? So we'll share that at the end of this as well. So we have, I think, about 1 or 2 minutes left, I think. But I am super curious. We wanted to open this up to all of you. You're probably going through exactly the same challenges right now. Like, what strategies are you using right now to identify those use cases and to decide on what are we going to actually spend time and effort and money on, and how do we track that? So super curious. I'm going to open that up to the chat. And then while we're doing that, I will put up the QR code here. There's a acceptable use policy. There's an agent planning worksheet. So there's a couple stuff in there as well.
Yeah, on this page that we post, we also share any of the presentations that we've done with, we presented at the healthcare leaders in Minnesota. We presented it in Colorado and Minnesota in different areas. It has a lot of the content from those different presentations as well. So it's not just this presentation. It also has a lot of our AR resources that we've put out there over the last several months. So yeah, happy to share and take it. And if there's, the only thing we say is if you want to have a conversation, go a little bit deeper, raise a hand. We'd love to have a chat.
Okay, just checking through the chat to see if we missed. Zach's been really great at answering the questions there. So
Awesome, you guys. This has been really great and insightful. I know my delay in answer or saying thank you so much is because I'm doing the QR code. I'm trying to figure out how to then email it to myself on my phone. So oh gosh, this has been great though. I love all the resources. I love all the ways that you had started to build and then got the result, went, that's not quite right, because that's really what it's about, right? When you're doing these agent builds, you are going to test, you're going to fail, you're going to reiterate and come back with something that's much more powerful, something that is exactly what you were looking for. So I think that's a good message too, is, don't give up. Like there is certainly ways that you can improve, and with agents you can edit them, and that's the wonderful thing, right? You can really get the results you need over time.